Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to the Transformational Thursday. I'm trusting you are well. It's a very interesting season. Many people have expressed to me how confusing it actually is. In one sense, we're anticipating a second wave of coronavirus, but everything is opening. They're telling us to go out and go back to work and engage, and it's a completely different narrative to 4 months ago. There are small pockets of London that are being closed down. We know about Leicester, we know about parts of up north, and I think there's this sense of deep-rooted concern, but there's no clarity, and it's a bit concerning for us all. Should we really just be pushing our children back out into all the activities and say yes to all the birthday parties that they've been asked to attend? Or should we be a bit cautious? What about us? Has anyone been invited out to a drink yet? I have. And I'm not really in a rush. Not in a rush to go, because one thing we recognize is the coronavirus hasn't gone away. It hasn't gone away. I spoke to my father on the weekend, and he's based in the Caribbean. And he said to me, "Oh, Mike, I take it you're not coming this way this year." I said, "Highly unlikely, Dad, highly unlikely." He said, "Well, to be fair, if you did come, you'd have to spend 2 weeks in quarantine. They've really locked down the whole travel arrangement because they want to reduce the spread of the virus." I'm not sure where we stand, which can make us feel a bit anxious, a bit concerned, sometimes even a bit reckless as to how we move around and have our day. More importantly, one of the things we don't want to feel is a sense of psychological imprisonment. So this is why today I want to share a bit more. We're on the part 6 of the state of mind. And I'd love to have a conversation with you later on. Please take any notes you can. There will be a recording of today's session that will be made available online. But as you take your own notes, feel free to ask questions later. David Shashen is in the room. He can answer all your questions. No, I'm joking. But between us, we can have a conversation, and if necessary, from this conversation, we can refer with conviction if there is a need to. All right? So welcome again to everyone. To the new visitors, Jane Dickens, welcome this morning. I'm not sure if I've seen you online before, but absolutely welcome. And to see you again, Susie, is really good. And some of our old faithfuls, long time no speak to Queen. Maybe you need to say something today. I've not heard your voice in a long time, and miss it. Lurleen, good to see you again. And to everyone else, Sarah, Fiona, and all the rest. Millie, great to see you again. All right. So yeah, we're on episode 6. And before I get into my notes, I just want to see if we are learning anything. So important for those of you who've been along this journey with me for the last 6 weeks. Have we learned anything? And if so, what's my first question? I gave you 4 therapeutic tips last week to help you in changing your state of mind. Can anyone tell me at least one of them?
Mindfulness, the ability to accept.
Mindfulness, absolutely brilliant. Yes, thank you. Was that Madhu?
No, it's Rox.
Oh, Rox. Okay, thanks, Rox. Anyone else? Give me another.
Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning, Queen.
One, and I'm not in the right place to speak today. And I said, not today, Mike, but I'll just mention one of the keys that you gave us. It was emotional regulation.
Whoa. Whoa. Yes, Queen.
I hold on. I won't be able to say anything. I'm not at home. I'm running around. Sorry.
Okay, right. Queen. Thank you for contributing early. Thank you so much. Brilliant. Hi, Mike. Emotional regulation. Brilliant. Thank you, Queen. Lily?
Hi. One is
Morning.
distress tolerance.
Distress tolerance. Wonderful. That sounds interesting. What is that, Lurleen?
It's supposed to be geared towards increasing a tolerance to negative emotion, seeking to understand rather than escape.
Oh my goodness, you sound like you were in the class last week, Lurleen.
I was.
Very good, very good, very good. Thank you very much. No, this is important because otherwise it's just me spieling off a lot of information. But when you can gather that information and try and make it make sense to where you're at, then that's learning. That's bigger than education. It's actually applied learning, and I think that's really important. So well done to those of you who've shared.
I have one more.
Sorry?
I have one more.
Interpersonal
Effectiveness.
Absolutely right. What was that?
It's techniques that allow you to communicate with others in a way that is assertive but not damaging. My favorite.
Very good, very good, very good, very good, very good, very good. And you see, all of these things benefit us first, and then those that we interact with. It makes us a better us. So we're paying attention to those 4 techniques. And I promised last week that we will touch, just a real small touch, because we definitely can't talk about these brain waves in detail or frequencies in detail in an hour and a half. It's years and years and years of study. But I'd like to just introduce the topic of frequencies that affect us as humans. They say that there's 5 main categories, but most of us operate within 4 daily. All right. The first one, and the one that most of us are aware of and we quote unquote living, is the beta, B-E-T-A. It's a hertz. It's a frequency between 12 and 35 hertz. And in that space, within our brains, this is just how we're wired. This is just our humanity, the brilliance of our brain. Within that space, that's where things like anxiety is dominant. It's where our brains are very active. Consciously paying attention to external attention. Listening to particular types of music that allow us to function within that frequency, and just to have that sense of interoperability as we move and live and breathe and travel through this earth. Most of us are engaging in this beta space. So if you wanted to market something to a particular person, if you wanted to get their attention, you're info, and it would have huge effect. All right. Okay, we'll get Lurleen. You know, I know you've done music. If you think I'm saying anything wrong, correct me. But I'm just giving you some stats and facts. The second, okay, thank you. The second frequency range, which we try to get into, you know, for some of us, it's after a glass of wine or listening to some classical music, or become a bit more chilled. For some of you, it's maybe a prayer. It might be a bit of meditation or contemplation or something spiritual. You go into this alpha wave, this alpha state, which is a frequency spectrum of 8 to 12 hertz, approximately. And that helps you to become very relaxed, and you have passive attention. It's just, this is nice, cool. Some of you experience that when you go. Some of you experience that when you go to the beach, or you know, when you take a hike and you're in the mountains and you see a beautiful view, and all of a sudden you just you muse, you contemplate, So that's important. Now, for those of you who, I know Ricky's very good at this, who loves to go inwards, really deep, contemplative, relaxed, inwardly focused. Remember we said that if you can't go out, you go in. Well, then once you start doing that, you go into this realm called theta. Deeply relaxed, where you're not even worried about the car horn blowing outside. Nothing's really agitating you or distracting you. You're just in that state, that's a lovely word again, in that state of relaxedness. And that can be quite difficult to do when there is so much noise around us. We talked about this before, turning down the volumes, switching off the news perhaps. Stop taking phone calls from negative friends. Stop responding to every message of quote unquote fake news that comes to you, you know, through the wonderful social medias. We don't know what to believe anymore. But to get into that space of theta is really important. But not many of us know how to. And then the fourth one that most of us enjoy is the delta. And there's different patterns of that, but the delta wave, which is a sleep state, sleep. You know, it's where the body refreshes itself. It's where you grow. It's where the blood pressure's reduced. It's where you dream in a sleep state. That's an interesting concept, isn't it? But did you know you can go through all of those frequencies in any particular day quite deliberately? You know, you must have seen that typical film where there's a monk and he's in deep practice and you tap him on his shoulder and he doesn't look around and he's not paying you any attention. He's in a sleep state, or at least a theta state, more than likely a sleep state, but still very much present. This is just the power of our minds. We could, in another class, go into the spirituality, what takes place once those zones are activated. But those are the four key things. Now, there is another one, which is gamma, but that's higher frequency than beta. It's the highest one. It's around 40 hertz upwards. And that is where the sharpest attention is paid. It's where your mental brilliance is displayed. It's where that mental prowess, that agility, that brilliance is just there, you know, heightened IQ, that sort of thing. But I reckon that we have to be able to get into the theta and the delta states to improve our beta state and potentially our gamma state. So we have to go in and quiet in order to be brilliant and expressive. It's very interesting. We have to go into all right, I know there are a lot of people on this platform who are of faith. And if so, perhaps it makes sense why God had to put Adam to sleep to do the work. All right. So there are some things that is created us in our sleep state that we manifest in our beta state or in our gamma state, or even potentially, preferably our alpha state. But they're incubated, birthed, and built, oftentimes in our theta and delta state. That's why we have dreams. That's why we have visions. Daydreaming. You've gone into a state. It's as simple as that. You've gone into a particular state when you daydream. This is not necessarily something mystical. It's just a function of our brain. If someone, God forbid, is in a car accident and they end up in a coma. The brain's gone into a particular state to protect the body. Instinctively, just does it. It knows when to shut down. But let's look at this in today's world, where we're at, more than likely, in that beta state, where there's a barrage of information being flooded towards you, and we really don't know what to think about. Just overwhelmed. We become anxious as to whether we should be going out in this state of coronavirus lockdown freedom. Should we be going out? Should we be staying in? How much more times do I need to go inside? You know, I've done that in the first month. I spent time just being reflective. I've set my goals. I've set my aims, my ambitions. Now what? First person I heard use this line was David. He said, the paralysis of analysis. How much more thinking do you want me to do before I start engaging, before I become deliberate? And that's where I think some of the problem is. Why there is some real upsurge in mental health issues. Is because some of the thinking gets trapped in this psychological vortex. And it just swirls around and around and around and around, and it becomes tiring. So your thoughts are not becoming things. Your thoughts are not being anchored. Your thoughts are not becoming an agenda. There's a saying, get it out of your head, into your hands. Too many people have talked about the grave being the richest place on earth because there's a lot of thoughts that never became things. A lot of beautiful inventions and pictures and songs and logo designs and buildings and many wonderful inventions were still in people's minds and they never got produced. So remember, I talked about programming last week. So we have to move from just this programming of information to a production. And guess who's in charge of the production? You are. It's not Steven Seagal. You are the producer of your life. I heard someone say yesterday, it's not my job to fix anyone. But it might be my job to support you as you fix yourself. It might be my job to create some information and make it available for you to think about and then produce. We don't want to get caught just in the thinking modality. Unless you are reasoning, we want to get it to that place of critical decision making and then action. Faith without works is not really good. It's a whole bunch of good intentions, a whole bunch of thoughts. But what have you done with your thoughts? So today I just want to share some things that may help us to shift our state of mind from that analysis point where we're just meandering and contemplating and never doing, to becoming a bit more active in our decision making, making intelligent decisions, especially if we have to apply the law of conformity. There are some decisions I make only after I've consulted someone who I believe may have the answer or has been there before, or could help me to, may never have been there, but may help me to think about what I'm thinking about and process my thoughts before I do. And so it's important that we're going to shift from just a bunch of thinking today to a bit more active doing, so that we're releasing some of that stress and that anxiety and that fragility of our beautiful, wonderful minds. Okay, we're releasing that pressure valve. Eureka, I know what to do. And suddenly. For those of you who know what that term came from. And suddenly. All right. So just to have a look at two things here. And I'm not going to go into detail on them, but just looking at two interesting states of mind. Let's look at the first one, anxiety. So many of us are anxious, if we were to really be honest. Anxious about our futures. As much as we dream of a better future, we're quite anxious. Anxiety is usually about things to happen. Things that will happen in the future. It's where you wake up in the morning, perhaps with sweaty armpits and arms, and you walk around feeling, oh my gosh, my face is clammy, worried about what's happening later on in the day. How am I going to pay my bills? Am I going to be healthy enough to meet the task? What's going on with the children? Am I going to have a job? Will I have the money? Am I smart enough? Anxiety is usually always about the future. Here's another one that meets all of us. Depression. Depression is just low thoughts. Low riding thoughts that reduce potential. And usually depression is a flare-up of things that have happened in the past. And then that's why I said on Tuesday, that's when we become, oh, it will always be my lot. And it never works out for me because you're rating your current status on yesteryear's experience. So how do we shift those modes? Mike, how do I get from a state of anxiety or depression into a space of rational thinking? Interesting question. And I'm not going to answer it now because I want us to get into that debate around that later on. I want to hear from others. I've got some suggestions, but I'll share them towards the end. Because you know what? Perhaps there's someone in the room who's experienced both of those things. As a matter of fact, we've all experienced anxiety because it's a function of the brain. We've all experienced moments of depression because things happen to us that make us feel sad. Grief happens to us all. And perhaps maybe there's someone in the room who could tell us how they got over it. What did they do to shift their state of mind? Because if you get caught into that rut that I talked about last week, when we're riding our bicycle and we meander off and we fall into the rut, if you get stuck in the rut of anxiety or stuck in the rut of depression, it then does really create that space of mental illness. Okay? So remember I said last week, we're all on the spectrum. It's whether you go into an extreme. And I'm just trying to help us stay in the middle of the lane of our lives with you as the rider. Okay? So I'm going to open up for conversation, and then I'll come back and spend another 10 minutes in a closing thoughts, which will give you four particular ways to observe your state of mind and what you could potentially do to shift it. Because ultimately, it's the same brain. It's your brain that creates some of these emotions, that creates your opportunities. It creates your thinking of euphoria or depression. It's your brain. So what's it feeding on? And I'm going to give you some tips at how we can shift it, like an electric shock almost. Shift it immediately. And then it's what you do after the shift has taken place, whether you revert or you maintain. All right. So let's have a conversation this morning. I think it's where we're at. You know, yesterday I listened to someone talk, Fiona actually, talk about grief. And we've all been there, especially in the last 4 months. And that's not just because of loss of life. We've all suffered grief. Our lives have changed. We're all online right now. we're doing things differently. We've lost some of our patterns. And it feels odd. But it's happening in our brain. It's happening in our brain. Okay, so let's have a conversation. Who would like to help me kick this off by suggesting some principles or an experience where they've had to shift their conscious behavior by thinking differently, but maybe doing other things to support the thinking to become active? All right, who would like to help me? And you know, actually, no, I'll leave it open. I was going to name someone. I won't be that harsh yet. Maybe later. Yeah, who would like to go first? Just give me a clue how you manage and shift your state of being. Morning, Jane. Please go ahead.
I don't mind going first. I think for me, one of the things I've learned during lockdown is in the beginning, I would tend to catastrophize the situation simply because it appeared really frightening. And we've got elderly relatives that we care for. And so at the beginning, when we went into lockdown, what I did to prevent my thoughts running away and the anxiety, I would focus on positive things each morning. So, for example, looking at photographs, videos of family holidays, writing notes of what I could control that day, and sort of not focusing on the things that I couldn't control. So as a family, there's been my husband, myself, and our two sons, 17 and 22, at home. And then we have been the only people visiting our elderly relatives who are shielding. So we sat down, the four of us, and talked about how we could protect them and us. And it was literally to stick to the lockdown rules rigidly. Even my youngest who's 17, even when they were lifted, he's been really good at not mixing. It's only this week he's gone out and mixed with others, which I'm really proud of. However, what I've noticed with us as a family, we have become more aware that lots of people are now not adhering to the restrictions, and we live in the north near Manchester, so we're very sort of, those emotions are going up and down again at the moment. So I'm trying very hard to refocus on the positives, what I can control. And like you say, we're being invited out, and we're explaining we don't feel comfortable with that. So I think that's, I don't know if that's an explanation that you wanted, but that's how I feel I've managed my thoughts and my anxiety.
Fantastic, Jane. Thank you for that. Jane, just to say, how did you hear about the CAF?
I don't know what I typed in on. It just came up on I can't remember what I was typing in, to be honest. And it came up, and then I signed up, and I've got your email.
Oh, wonderful. Jane, you're more than welcome to join us. And thank you for your contribution this morning. Thank you very much. Okay. All right. Okay, I think Lurleen, your hand went up next. Please go ahead. Lurleen, you need to be unmuted.
Oh, there we go. I was trying to unmute and it said it's not unmuted. carrying on from what Jane just said, during lockdown, because I live alone, okay, so especially at the beginning of that, I found it really, really hard. So for me, it was a matter of listening to some uplifting music, to help. And I sing as well, so singing helped to um, alleviate some of the depression, if you like, or the anxiety, and also keeping in contact with a friend, a loved one, just somebody to speak to, because being in the house and you and just the four walls, it's not easy. Sometimes it's like the walls are closing in on you, So for me, it was finding somebody to talk to, just to, talk to, whether it was my manager, whether it was my pastor, whether it was a friend, and listen to music, uplifting music, because there's obviously different types of music. Some can make you feel more depressed than you are, but you got to make sure it's the uplifting type of music that you're listening to, And that's all I want to say.
Excellent. Thank you, Lurleen. So connectivity with people, with friends and family is important, as well as listening to the right music. You're touching on some of my answers for later, but we'll get there. But I like the fact that, and it proves that someone's well-being is heightened with connectivity, social well-being. All right. So the whole idea of being isolated actually goes against the grain and nature of us as humans. So we have to do what we can to connect with people. Thank God for Zoom. Thank God for programs where we can see each other. We can't necessarily touch each other, but we can see each other's smile or whatever. And that has helped. That has really helped. So well done. Thanks, Lurleen. Zoma, your hand went up next. Please go ahead.
Hi, good morning, everyone. I think what I got from what you were saying, which is, I think, slightly different take from others, but still in line with what others have said, is just that sometimes I think that the states that we enter in that you were referring to before, I think that they can almost be, at least some of the thinking patterns, if you like, they can almost be habitual. And I don't know the practicality of this because it's something I'm working on myself, but it's just that ability to, I think it's called mentally disrupt. So sometimes when you find yourself slipping into thinking negatively or slipping into that anxiety, to be able to form a habit of just being able to, if you like, snap out of it. And I've seen it with some of these people that have something as simple as a rubber band around their wrist. So when they have certain thoughts pertaining to something that they don't want to think, they snap the rubber band against their wrist to kind of, that's their way of throwing them back on track and to get them back thinking on certain other things. So I think there could be some kind of mental disruption where that could throw things, where it could throw your mind back on track. Now, that I think is easier said than done, but I tend to think that there's a way to maybe get into the habit of doing that so that when some of these thought processes happen, you can kind of redirect them. I think music, like Lily mentioned anyway, it's kind of a good way of doing it. I just think it's that, I'm just thinking about first step of being able to actually say, right, I am thinking negatively. Let me get some music on that will uplift me or something like that. Or alternatively, just having it on constantly so your mind doesn't have an opportunity to go onto negative things or to go into old habits until it's a habit of positivity over time. So yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Brilliant. Thank you, Zoma. And what you've talked about there with the elastic band around the wrist is the same principle I mentioned about the lab rats, where they got an electric shock and that memory recall took place until it became a learnt behaviour. So yes, you're absolutely right. There are some things, some stimuli we can put in place to train our brains to be a particular way. So brilliant, well said, thank you. Madhu, you came in next. Please go ahead. Morning.
Yes, thank you so much. Yeah, I think it's just it's sort of the habit forming is the big point here, which the previous speaker just made. You know, this is an opportunity for us to change some of our bad habits. We all have all these horrible habits, which is automatic, the negative thinking or reacting to people in different ways. And I think this lockdown is, in a way, it's been a gift to us in the sense that we have time now to change some of these bad habits. And for me, it's like just even getting up earlier, something simple like that, getting up earlier in the day makes a huge difference to the rest of the day. And doing quiet time at a regular time, as I mentioned before, I'm trying to do that in my own language. That really helps. And I really more aware of my own fluctuating self-esteem, which, you know, so you have to be careful of this pressure that we're under. And I think because of the stressful situation, it does come out sometimes. I've found personally going for a regular walk. I'm trying to walk every single day, being in nature, smelling the flowers, looking at the grass, noticing the delicacy of all this creation around us or around me really uplifts me. And finally, gardening has been such a gift. You know, we have a garden here and I haven't really appreciated it that much, but now I've been planting tomatoes, onions, the potatoes are coming up. The strawberries are not as good, but the radishes I've already used the radishes in my salad. So growing your own food, wow, it's just so amazing and makes you feel so good. I'm thinking, wow, why didn't I do this before? You know, this is an incredible way to uplift our spirits, eat something very good for us, and just have a more positive outlook on life. Like I found that those things combined have really helped me. And of course, talking to your friends as much as you can. And this cafe, having this platform to share, also makes a huge difference in well-being.
Thank you, Madhu. And the only thing you need to add to that list is your dancing again. we wanna hear you come back on and say, guess what, guys? I've been dancing. It's really helped me. Well done, Madhu. Keep it up. Keep it up. All right, excellent. Thank you. Sabrina, you're next. Please go ahead. Good morning to you.
Hi, good morning, everybody. I'd just like to say I'm probably missing. I'm a real people person and I love contact and I love seeing people. So the government just brought out that 50% off scheme to go into restaurants and things. So I said to the girls, my daughters, let's go in, and I live in Croydon. So we went into Croydon yesterday. Now we were headed for Five Guys because Five Guys is so expensive. And for those who don't know it, they do burgers and they're really delicious. Croydon was absolutely packed. And for me, that was so good to see because this is my community and I'm a real community person. So we walked past Box Park first and that was packed solid. And for those people that don't know Box Park is made up of small businesses. So they really do need our custom. So if it's meant that this government scheme is the thing that's brought people back out together, but also keeping the community going, because if those businesses go, there's no community. And, you know, as we were walking, my youngest daughter saw a lady that normally looks after her in childcare. So that was really lovely that we can have a conversation. And then we walked down and my eldest daughter saw someone she used to go to school with. And I walked further down and I saw someone I used to go to the gym with. So everybody was out and it was really lovely. And lots of families were out with children because I'm looking at September. If people are keeping their children in, and you touched on it, anxiety and things like that, we need to look at what is potentially happening to people that are staying in, because for me, isolation can bring on some of the mental health things when you're not actually interacting with society in any which way at all. So I do like going on walks and things like that, but I do also like the social element. So also our gym reopened, and I started aqua aerobics again, and people that I thought wouldn't come back have. So people with disabilities have actually come back. We've got into the pool. It's been like 2 weeks now we've been doing this. And again, the social aspect of bringing together lots of different people from lots of different cultures, I think it's really lifted everyone. Everyone's so happy to be back and see the staff at the gym and things like that. So I think if any of you don't know about the government scheme, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and I'm not working for the government, but it's 50% off in the restaurants. If you're short on cash, this is a fantastic time to go out. Social distancing is taking place, but I think it's a fantastic way to support your community. So that's all I've got to say on that side.
Thank you, Sabrina. I was waiting for you to talk about social distancing because I think it's still important. Thank you for that. And yeah, I think we should support who we can with the most wisdom applied. So brilliant. Thank you. Habida, your hand was up, and then I'll come to Beatrice next. Habida, did you still want to say something? You've gone off camera.
Yes, sorry. I was actually going to kind of add to what Uzoma was saying, and it was what worked for me was making the decision. You know, I'm a very emotional person, so I can kind of get lost with how I'm feeling, and learning in the CAF that my feelings should not run me, and that I also, when I do make a decision to think a certain way, I can pull the craziness that kind of runs off in my, I guess, mind and head back. So for example, when you said make a decision not to complain, and I just think that changed my life for me, because I'm always the one that's like, oh, this should be put here and this should be put there, and so in the house, it even changed the air in the house. You know, the kids weren't worried about where they were putting things. I would just decide to just pick it up, and there were less fights and things like that, and I saw the difference. Or waking up and having this emotion that, oh gosh, another day, and rather than saying that, I would wake up and say, ooh, I have time today, what can I do? So just making the decisions positively, regardless of how I felt, was a big one. And even now, listening to more and more about how my mind works, it makes even more sense to do these things. So just following on from, you know, Uzoma's statement, that's what came to mind.
Thank you, Habida. See, this is the power of our wonderful brains. I mean, if you get a chance and you want to YouTube how your brain works, you'll be fascinated. You'll be fascinated at what chemicals gets released the moment you make a decision to get up and, right, I'm going to go for a walk. The support system that your brain gives you. But it's the same brain that says, nah, can't be bothered. It's all happening in one wonderful space called a brain. And the more we can regulate that, or allow it to regulate us in a particular and positive way, the better our life chances are, the more improved our well-being can be. I've got two questions. I've been informed that Sheila, your hand is, you can't find a raise hand button, but please go ahead, Sheila. You're up next.
Yeah, hi everybody.
Hi,
I
Sheila.
just wanted to say, yeah, it's been a bit of a journey. I think we all get lost during this whole COVID scenario that we're all into in terms of uncertain times and everything else. And I mean, I've chosen to completely remove myself from listening to news because it can be overwhelming, and it can be too much information, which can distort your focus in life and what you set out to do on a daily basis. So I've started to write things down. So I literally get a book and I make a list of everything that I need to do, that I want to accomplish, and I'll pick up the book And even if I accomplish 3 things out of the 10 things that I've written down, you know, that is an achievement in itself. And then, I mean, the list will forever keep growing, of course. But then I just think, well, do you know what? Not to be harsh on myself too much. I just think tomorrow's another day. And even your list will forever grow. You'll always add new things. Something else will come up. But again, it's just finding a way how to manage that and getting back into control, how you can control your day to be to allow it to be a productive day. And then tomorrow's another day. But that's how I get over things, and maybe listen to like positive affirmations and positive music that sort of uplifts you when you have any sort of disappointing news, or you feel like you've been drawn back into the negative cycle. Yeah, music is the way forward. It just sort of uplifts you and uplifts your energy levels.
Brilliant. Thank you, Sheila. Well said. You know, you've talked about this task list, this thing you want to achieve, but what jumped out based on what you were saying is that you chose to be kind to yourself if you didn't achieve it. What a wonderful position. What a wonderful position. When you're being kind to yourself, it gives you another chance. When you're being harsh to yourself, you shut it down. So brilliant. I love what you said, and keep going. You know, one day you may share some of your accomplishments with the group. It'll be lovely to hear them, and we'll cheer you on. All right. So thank you. Beatrice, good morning to you. Please go ahead.
Good morning.
Morning.
Just like Sheila's just said that she had to get off the news completely. For me, I had to disconnect from some social media platforms because I noticed that most of the times, like since everyone was on lockdown, everyone seemed to have a lot of free time in their hands, and some of the calls really which would come in were so negative, and you'd spend like hours and hours because everyone knows you're free. So someone would call and the stories are just not stopping. And by the time you're done with that call, you just feel like you've wasted your time. And sometimes some calls would just like leave you hopeless in a terrible state. So honestly, some people on WhatsApp, I had to block them. I had to get out of Facebook, and just to give myself a time to be me, to internalize and just be me. And I noticed that I was kind of, I don't know, like losing hope sometimes. So I decided to lay my hands on this book called The Purpose-Driven Life. It's written by Rick Warren. And it says, it gives us so many things like why you're on earth, the reason for your existence, and why God created you. And it affirms to you that you're not an accident, you're here for a purpose. There's something that you're supposed to achieve while you're here. And by the time I was done with that book, I felt like my spirit was really lifted, and I felt like energized to do the things that I'm supposed to do here. So that has been so helpful for me, like getting out of the lot of noise which is around us and just focusing on doing things inside. Thank you.
Thank you, Beatrice. And you chose to shut down some of that beta wave noise.
Yeah.
That noise that I know what you mean. And it can be quite offensive when you say to someone, please don't send me any more of those. But you know what? For your own safety, sometimes you just need to say that to some people. So well done. Courage to you, power to you for doing so. Good morning, Ijura. Long time no speak. Hope you're well. Please go ahead.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to speak today. And sorry, this might be a little bit lengthy, but just for me to get at what I want to say. From the beginning of the lockdown, I was one of the first people that was asked to shield. So I was kind of confined in my home. And something happened sometimes to be precise, on the 8th of May that shifted my whole thinking. And what happened was, it was so dramatic. It was about my husband. Because of the nature of his job, just within 2 days, something happened and he completely passed out. It was just myself and him in the house. And when he passed out, I had to do so many things that I didn't even know I was doing. But even in doing that, for some reason, I wasn't frightened, but I called the paramedics who they came later on, did all they needed to do, and well, in the midst of it all, he couldn't talk. He couldn't even remember his name. He couldn't stand on his feet. They had to lift him up, check his temperature. It was over about 40 degrees. And I thought, oh God, could it be COVID? But anyway, to the glory of God, he took him to the hospital, checked whatever, and he came back the same, spent about 8 hours, and he came back home. Everything was clear and okay. At that point, I sat down and I now thought back at what had happened all through the time that I was with him alone, how I carried him from the bed to the bathroom and all that happened, transpired there. And when the paramedics came, it had to take 3 of us to lift him up to the bed, which was what I did when I was alone. So thinking back after the whole thing, I said, wow, God must have sent his angel to walk with me through all that time that I was alone. Now, I was in the house, confined in the house, not going out at all. And I said to myself, if this can happen within a twinkle of an eye, because it was between life and death, he was completely gone. If this could happen, it means me going out or not going out, my life actually is in the hand of God. And for what had happened, it now made me to realize that, look, in whatever situation I am in, God is with me and he knows what is going to happen. So whatever precaution I take, even though I will take those precautions, I now have it in mind that, yes, God has got my back and I can do all things. And then I decided, look, I'm not going to confine myself to the house anymore. I'm going to step out. And I remember the first day I stepped out, it felt so strange. It was like I was a stranger to my own environment, just to walk around the area where we stay. And it just dawned on me that, look, I cannot keep myself locked in, because the more I keep myself locked in, the sicker I become. And watching the news all the time, keep hearing the rates, the number of deaths going up day in, day out, was kind of so overwhelming. And you're just thinking every day, all you think about is death. And I said to myself, I'm going to stop watching this news about death, and I am going to concentrate on something better, and I'm going to think every day that, look, as I'm going out there, God is with you. Even though you keep your social distance, God is with you. You are in God's hands. Nothing happens to you without the knowledge of God. And that has completely set me free. And then coming onto well-being, whereby I come and socialize, I'll call it that way most of the time, even though I get educated as well, it has made life much more easier and simpler to live. So I can go out, I can live my life, and I can enjoy my life without thinking of all the negative things that is going on in the media, because that is the worst thing. The media is the worst thing that can ever happen to you. So that is just my little story.
Wow, Ijora, can I just ask, is your husband okay now?
Oh yeah, he's been okay. That it was just about 8 hours. He went to the hospital, came in. It wasn't COVID at all. So it was some bacteria, they said. So they gave him some antibiotics, and that was it.
It's amazing what you've mentioned. I remember reading in this book years ago of a situation where this slim woman, she was size 8, was in a car accident with her husband, and her husband, she managed to get out, and the car was in a particular way which was trapping her husband. And this woman, who was very slim, not a weightlifter or anything, managed to lift and move the car. Now, I'm not saying that anyone should try and go and lift a car or move it, but you'll be surprised at what your body does in flight or fight syndrome. You'll be surprised at the amount of chemicals that gets released, equipping you to do some amazing things. Like I said, just to get up and go to walk, I can tell you 4 chemicals that get stimulated straight away. You got adrenaline, you get cortisone, you get endorphins, and this wonderful thing called BDNF. And those are just things I can think of that just get you active to say, right, I'm going to go for a walk through the park. But maybe your brain knows how much more of those things to release, especially in trauma. So I'm not that specialized in it. Maybe we need to get a neuroscientist on to help us. But it's amazing. Our brains are amazing, and I don't think we know enough about it. And if we perhaps did take some more time to figure out a bit more about our brains, our engagements with people and ourselves could be different. So thank you for that, and Joran. Power to you and your strength. maybe you're a superhero.
Thank you.
Thank you, Joran. Brilliant. Let me see. There is Millie. Good morning to you. I haven't spoken to you in a while. Millie, you work in the mental health industry. How do you find or observe people in particular states of mind? And is there anything you do to help them shift? Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
Keenly. I think during this time of lockdown, you know, as you said, it's a time of spiritual renewal. Certain things, you know, we've now had time to reflect on, you know, where we are, what we're about, and so on. As I said earlier, in this time of lockdown, gone through different experiences, and I can link with other people as saying things about connectivity. I think connectivity has been one of the big ones for me during this time, and becoming more aware of the people who aren't able to connect. And it's so important, yes. A lot of different agencies and so on have been connecting via Zoom, you know, or WhatsApp. Yesterday, someone sent me a WhatsApp saying this particular organisation, they're going to be starting as a WhatsApp group. And I'm aware that this organisation works with a lot of elderly people who may not have access to computers and WhatsApp. And I'm thinking to myself, what about those people? And I make it a point of actually phoning people regularly because there are people who are locked down and shut in. People are aware that they have particular ailments, like someone I contacted yesterday, in addition to the mental health difficulties, that person also has physical difficulties. And they need that connection with people because they are locked in so that their mental condition does not deteriorate even more. For myself, I'm realizing that the Lord has shifted me from the mental health position more towards the educational side. And, you know, even yesterday, a colleague got in contact with me. Can I do something with one of the universities next week? You know, this wasn't expected because everyone's saying September is when it's all going to restart again. But I believe the Lord has been preparing me to take me further. My church, I think that's been a positive in that the church has moved to Zoom and we're able to connect with each other more. We're able to pray more together, pray one for another, become aware of what's happening. When we were, you know, pre-lockdown, busy 9 to 5, we wouldn't know what was happening with Sister Brown down the road or Brother Smith over here. But now we're able to make those connections. And I think the brain is better for these connections. Thank you.
Thank you, Millie. So again, it's about keeping in touch with people, that wonderful social interaction. What I'm fascinated with is the wonder of our brains, especially around decision making, where we can move from a lot of analysis and theory into active practice. So just wondering a bit more, let's dig in a bit more as to how we can potentially engage our brains to think the best thoughts possible, even in bad scenarios. So for example, we were talking about grief yesterday, and we realized that it's a natural occurrence. If I have to grieve and I give myself permission to grieve, I am taking the best approach to a bad situation. Do you understand my scenario? Rather than me just avoiding it, running away, woe is me, look what's happened. I'm giving myself permission to do what comes naturally. Where is grief located? I'm sure it's in the brain. Powerful entity that we have. So what can we do to make us manage, especially as we are unsure whether we want to engage socially as we used to? But as Millie says, and as Madhu says, and as many others have said, it's so important to interact. So should we continue interacting from a distance? How do we engage our brains properly so that you get the best of me, I get the best of you? We can still socially distance, physically distance, but not socially distance. I think social distancing is damaging to our psychology. Physical spacing is not bad. If you socially isolate a child under the age of 5, they grow up with psychological deformity. So why are we socially distancing? Don't hear me say go out and do everything. I'm saying social distance is bad. Social distancing is bad for us as humans. Physical distancing right now may not be a bad idea. So that's the context, all right? All right. That leads me on a lovely moment here to help us, Fiona. How are you this morning, Fiona? Could you offer a thought or a context on how we've all grieved. And as I said at the beginning of the session, for some of us, it has been physical loss, physical human loss. But for some of us, I can't do the things I used to do, and it makes me feel bad. Fiona, where is this?
Sorry.
Where is this located, and how can we be better?
Oh dear. I think you pretty much. Sorry, my camera doesn't seem to be working this morning. Probably my connection. You've asked a hard question. Where is this located? Because it's emotion-based, I would dare to say that, and by the way, this was not my best area when I was studying, but I would dare to say it would be in the hippocampus. And in terms of what you said a while ago, giving yourself permission, that means that you are actively engaging another area of your brain, and you are engaging, you are acknowledging, you are recognizing what your input is, and exercising measures of control over your response to what that input is. So one of the reasons why we say step by step, one day at a time, step by step, baby steps, is because you cannot absorb all of this input at once. Yes, the event has happened, but your awareness and your acknowledgement has to come at your pace. You have to be able to control that. And if you don't control it, you become overwhelmed in an overwhelming situation. And there is no possibility of finding your way within that muck, that murky turmoil. So you have to begin small. And that beginning is about, yes, giving yourself permission that you are in a horrible situation. Whatever the reason, you're in a horrible situation, your emotions are engaged. And that first level of acknowledgement gives you access to the next level, which is where you start to control what you are going to deal with on a step-by-step basis and how you are going to deal with it. When you apply that now to a situation like the pandemic, like the lockdown, like going out in the lockdown, it is very easy to tap into other people's perceptions and reactions, and along with yours, that can very easily become overwhelming again. So again, it's a matter of analyzing what is out there, acknowledging where your control is. And quite frankly, you can only control yourself, what you do and how you do it. So if it means that you're going to go out in a gradual process, you're going to take one step out the door today, 2 steps tomorrow, that's okay. Because that's how you determine you can manage your situation, your input, and your acknowledgement, and your level of awareness. And what you're going to do about when you've received the input, now you put your 2 steps out, what do you do with your feelings? What do you do with the knowledge, that step by step? And give yourself permission to do that regardless of what anybody else is doing or saying. At the end, it's down to you to live your life how you are comfortable.
Wow, how well said, Fiona. Thank you for that. It is the baby steps. For many of us, we've taken a long time to train ourselves to be the way we are today. And it's not going to change overnight, but it's a starting point today. And if, as Fiona said, if it's 1 step today and then we attempt 2 tomorrow, that's fine. And if you fail tomorrow and you only do 1 instead of 2, like Sheila, you don't beat yourself up. We start again, all right? Because we're all in this state of change. We're all in this transition. We're all different to how we were 6 months ago. For some of us, it's better. For some of us, it's downright difficult and challenging. So thank you, Fiona. Thank you to everyone. I think what I would like to do now is just share my next 10 minutes with some strategies to help us manage our state of being and helping us to shift from that hippocampus region to that prefrontal neocortex region where we're making critical decisions and we're being a bit more deliberate rather than just processing. First thing to do is track / observe your state. Observe where you're at. And one of the best ways to observe your state is to ask yourself, how am I doing? You know, when others ask you that question, sometimes we fluff the answers. Sometimes we give the answers that we think they need to hear, according to whom is asking the question. But when you ask yourself that question, it's harder to lie to yourself. Because if you flake it and fluff it, there's another part of your brain that says, who are you trying to kid? Our brains are brilliant, man. They're brilliant. They're brilliant. Okay, so ask yourself, how am I doing? And you can rate yourself on a scale of 1 to 10. If you're feeling poor or weak or rubbish around the situation, be honest. How are you feeling? That's point one. The second one is to label it, to name it. So how am I feeling is one thing, but then you might need to start labeling. Oh, I'm feeling very irritable. I'm feeling very worried. I'm feeling very anxious. I'm feeling very rebellious or angry or vulnerable. Whatever your feeling is, name it, name it, name it, name it, name it. And so we're trying to add some intelligence to an emotion here. And, you know, we've already gone through what parts of the brain do that. So we're trying to articulate how I'm doing. So the third thing to do is to try and calm down. Not always easy. So if your emotions are running away with you, is there a way you can pause? Just pause. Is there a way we can just stop for a second or 2 or 3 or 10? We were told to count to 10 when we were younger, right? Is there a way we can just pause and try and correct some of those imbalances? Is there a way you can do it? Have you given yourself a moment to breathe, to cool down, to calm, to relax, to reflect, to even wonder why you are getting irritable? Why are you feeling the way you are? Okay? And then observe, if you were feeling at number 2 out of 10 and now it's risen to 5 or 6, why? What happened? What triggered something? What has opened this floodgate? The fourth thing is very similar to the third, which is if after cooling down or pausing, contemplating, you find that that doesn't get to the root of your problem, you can then ask yourself, is there something I need to fix or I can fix? Is there a problem that's identifiable that's causing these negative emotions? And what can I do to fix the problem or fix me in the problem, even if it's temporarily? For some, it could be just going for a walk. For some, it's getting on a bike. For some of it, for you, it's to pray. For some of you, it's to eat food. And I'm not taking that lightly. Sometimes you're angry when you're hungry. Yeah? Sometimes you haven't eaten, you haven't slept, and you're just irritable. You haven't taken your meds, and you're irritable. Is there something you can fix? Yeah? All right. And another simple thing you could do is to talk to someone. Talk to someone. Talk to someone. Talk to someone and share your honest thoughts. Talk to someone you can trust. That's not going to echo your thoughts to the whole world and embarrass you. But talk to someone. Initially, it doesn't have to be a trained professional. It could be someone you respect. It could be your sibling, it could be your cousin, it could be your brother, it could be your mum, it could be your dad, it could be your neighbor. It could be someone who's befriended you and is looking out for your best well-being. Talk to someone. And then as you talk, you may find a solution for you to solve the problem. So that's the 5 simple things that you can do today. Now, the 6th thing could be seek professional help. And you could go through this cycle on each one of the problems or the challenges that you're facing. Because as humans, we face multiple dimensional challenges, complex situations at the same time. And so we may have to run through that 5 stages on each of the challenges that we're facing. All right? Very simple stuff. But it causes you to now become quite present in your situation. It causes you to think, what is going on? Is it me? Is it them? Is it us? And then if it's you, you can correct you. And if you can't, seek help early. We call it early intervention. Don't wait until it's corrupted, it's corroded, it's a complete mess before you seek help. So, all right, that's 5 key principles. Remember, we're not avoiding anything. We're not avoiding anything. We're managing everything. Okay? And one of the things we have to do, remember, is look at the emotional regulation. We look at the things that are causing the distress and look at the tolerance levels. How can I be a bit more tolerant, especially if the person who's offended you is not even aware they're doing it? That happens a lot. People offend you and they don't even know they've done it. How do you create some tolerance? Is there a moment for a conversation? What do you do? And then look at that interpersonal effectiveness. How can I connect with this person or this situation in a better way? That's no longer disrupting me and making me swerve my bike from the center lane to the ditch. Some of us has become so good at falling in the ditch. As soon as a challenge comes, we swerve for the ditch. And I'm saying, no, balance your steering. Try and stay in the middle of that lane. Go through that 5-stage process. Give yourself a chance. But more importantly, be kind to yourself as you do it. All right. So that's my 5 keys for today. And I'm just hoping and sensing that we can attach them to ourselves, unlock dimensions in us. We've traveled in the last 6 sessions to deep stuff, hidden emotions that are acting out and we don't know why. Some of them we've never been allowed to have the intelligence to decipher what's really going on. But it's become us. It's melted and wedged into the fabric of who we are. And to unpick it and to disengage it from our character does need professional help, but it may start with a simple 5 stages. Just being aware, observing. What's rising your temperature? What is it? Why does it rise your temperature? There is usually a legitimate reason. We're not all born chaotic and stupid. Sometimes we act stupid because of that. That was our response. Survival. Sometimes we become insular because of the things that have happened to us. Some of the things that have happened to you, you are definitely not to be blamed for. Some of it is generational, pass on, traded down, traditions. But we have a chance today, whilst we have breath, we have a chance to at least look in the mirror of our own lives with an endeavor to improve our well-being today. I hope that these last 6 sessions have been useful for you. And I'm going to leave the last 4 or 5 minutes for, and I trust this man implicitly, maybe just for a comment from you, David, to support how we can really start to navigate that space that can be difficult, to challenge ourselves to be better, to embrace who we are, warts and all, to be kind, to be better. Please offer a thought, David.
Thanks, Mike. I wasn't expecting to say anything, but I think the single thought that I would add to all that you've said is around acceptance. And I think I was talking to Ricky earlier in the week, and I was saying that I'm a person of faith, and I read the Bible, and I was reading the Bible, and I had all these genealogies, all these names of people, and it got boring. And I thought to myself, God, this is going to be a boring read. It's chapters and chapters. And so I thought to myself, why are all these names here? And it just dawned on me, and I'm not saying it's the right answer, I'm saying it's what dawned on me. I thought to myself, most people live an average life. And every so often you get somebody that lives an extraordinary life. That doesn't mean an unfulfilled life. It means a life that they achieve perhaps more than we would expect the average person to achieve. Not because they're better, but that's just what happens in life. And I think it got me thinking about the routineness and the mundane nature of life. And that mundane and routine doesn't mean boring, actually. Just the rhythms that we develop. And I think as I've been thinking about today, the danger is that we think that life is always to be exciting, and life is always to be fixed, and life is always to be a smooth rhythm. But actually, it strikes me that much of life is about doing the tough stuff, and occasionally and incrementally, we get to do the stuff that makes us feel increasingly more purposeful and increasingly more powerful. But we start with that mundane, routine stuff that we have to work through. And the gift of working through that is that we come out at the other end feeling more fulfilled, making a greater contribution. And so accepting that mundane, routine existence in the beginning is where we develop our disciplines, and we develop our habits, we develop our psychological frameworks that give us the possibility of a bigger and a better and a happier life. So that would be my thought, this whole idea of accepting where we are, doing the hard work, knowing it would lead us to get to a place where we can be more fulfilled and we can express more of who we are.
Wow. Thank you, David. And I think the stitch and thread of everyone's conversations today has helped me to be more aware of who I am. And so thank you to everyone who's contributed, from the first person right through to David as the last. Really do appreciate you, Fiona, and everyone else. Really do appreciate you. And I'm hoping that we can think well, we can live well in order to be well. Let's look at what those 3 components really mean: thinking, living, being. All right? Be kind to yourself. Let that be your sweetie wrapper. Yeah? Just be kind to you. Yeah? Look yourself in the mirror and say something nice to yourself today. All right? Try it. It will work wonders. Have a wonderful, peaceful, and stress-free day. All right? See you soon. See you next week, Tuesday. All right? Have a wonderful week. Bye-bye, everyone.